The Spanish Grand Prix has been a permanent fixture on the Formula One calendar for over 30 years now, and for good reason. Do you remember Michael Schumacher's absolute dominance here in that rain-soaked Grand Prix in 1996? That day he took his first ever victory for Ferrari, and we've had many more iconic moments since. The Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya then, a high-speed 2.89-mile circuit which demands an efficient downforce package and bravery on the part of the driver, especially through the blind right of turn 9, which we might just see taken flat this weekend. And as always, a man with plenty of racing experience joins me in the commentary box. Today it's Anthony Davidson. Tell me, Ant, you're no stranger to surviving the melee of turn 1. So how do you keep out of trouble when there's so much going on around you?
There are three main things to worry about there, Crofty. Positioning, awareness and discipline. First, you have to put your car in a bit of space and make sure you have room to react to what the others are doing. Then you have to watch your mirrors and listen to the sounds around you to get a sense of where everyone is. And finally, just don't get too greedy. Just because a gap exists doesn't always mean you should go for it.
Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. Good job yesterday from Valtteri Bottas. The Finn starts from pole position, and Lewis Hamilton completes the front row. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Perez, Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, and Leclerc, Norris, Ricciardo, Gasly, and Yuki Tsunoda, Fernando Alonso, Stroll, Sebastian Vettel, and Ocon, Giovinazzi, Russell, Robert Schwartzman, and Kimi Raikkonen, Mick Schumacher, Latifi, Mazepin, and the owner-driver. And with lights out just moments away, it's time to go down to the track.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and today we're back here with another My Team Career Mode Season 2 video. And as you can see, we are here at a very sunny Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya for the Spanish Grand Prix. If you haven't watched last video, that was supposedly quali. You can see that we're from the back of the grid, and that is of course because we didn't do quali. We needed to replace a CE, and of course you only get allocated 2 CEs in one season. So with it being round number 3, I knew that it was very likely that we would not take a penalty today and not take one for this weekend. We'd then have to take one at Austria, and I think we've got better chances at Austria. So I thought I'd take that penalty here today. And then I thought, seeing as my best possible result, probably what I was looking at in terms of free practice times and how good I am at this track in terms of quali, we were looking at P11, probably that drop us 5 places down to P16, maybe P17 had we not have had as good of a quali as I would have been hoping for. And by that point, you might as well just stack grid penalties, and from there, stack the grid penalties, start from the back, and you don't have to worry about the other components, because we should be covered with the other components. Even if we have a mechanical failure that takes out a fresh component, we should, I say should, because of taking those grid penalties, should be okay in terms of every other engine part and not having to take penalties for them later in the season. What we have done is, apart from the CE, we have switched back to the parts we used at Imola and Bahrain, if they're still usable, and then we'll go to the fresh parts we took the penalties for this weekend in France. A little bit confusing, but all you need to know is that we're starting from the back of the grid because of grid penalties, and we've got a lot of work to go forward. In terms of the tyre strategy, before we have a look at the grid, because of course we didn't get to see that yesterday in quali, because we went out in Q1, so we didn't get to see Q2 and 3, because we didn't do any laps, of course. It is an interesting strategy. Everyone in the top 10 will have to use the softs in this race. That will certainly make it spicy. I have to say, it's a simple two-stopper for those guys. The question is, do we go mediums and softs, or mediums and hards, or softs and hards? You can see the tyre wear up there predicted is massive. So what we are going to do is we're going to start on the mediums and then probably go to the hards. If tyre wear is pretty low for us and we're doing all right, then we'll probably go to like lap 22 on the mediums maybe, and then do an 11 lap stint on the softs. That's only if we're comfortable with tyre wear. If there's too much tyre wear, it'll be medium to hard. No brainer. In terms of points, if we can gain quite a few positions on the first few laps, there's a chance of points, because don't forget the top 10 will be on that second alternate strategy, which, as you can see, is very slow around here. 12 seconds slower at Spain. A pit stop's about 18 seconds. It's not a good strategy. Generally, because the tyres just lose the advantage with a massive amount of tyre wear and the drop-off here at Spain. So we're starting on the mediums. Likely that will go to the hards. There's a possibility we might be able to stretch the mediums onto some softs, but it's very unlikely. So we're going to take the no-risk strategy of starting on the mediums. Then we have the choice later in the race. Of course, we might end up going on to the hards earlier if there's a safety car, maybe. On lap 10, we might go earlier onto the hards, or we might be able to really push it to go onto the softs. We'll have to wait and see, but we're starting on the mediums, and it's likely that will go to the hards. But, you know, strategies, they change throughout the race, so you never know. We've got plenty of sets of fresh softs after quali that we can use, so no need to worry about that because we haven't done any quali. Let's have a look at the grid then. Well, this is pretty much the first time I've seen the grid, apart from, of course, the intro bit at the start when they go through the grid rundown, but I have to say, Mercedes looking pretty good, P1 and 2. They've got a massive lead in the R&D this weekend. That's helping them out, and as I'm sure you can see, they're P1 and 2. Valtteri Bottas ahead of his teammate. No real surprises there with that one. Valtteri Bottas, generally, he has got the better focus, and he's the reigning driver champion. We saw him last season with some fantastic driving, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more of that today. But Valtteri Bottas, P1, Hamilton, P2. Then the Red Bulls, P3 and 4, looking a little bit off the pace there, struggling with a much worse car. But considering the gap in the R&D, the Red Bulls aren't doing too badly. And when we get into a race situation, they get an overtake on the Mercedes, it's going to be hard to try and get back on them. If we get a little train with those guys, the quality positions aren't really going to matter. But Bottas ahead of Hamilton, you wouldn't, like in real life, you know, you wouldn't expect that. But of course, in our career mode, that's certainly the way it's going. And then Perez in front of Verstappen. No real surprises there. After last time at Imola, Perez looking fantastic and really gave us a run for our money for the win, but we managed to take it in the end. Where there was a half the field pile-up, that also was caused by Valtteri Bottas spinning, and then we had spins involving Hamilton, lots of broken front wings, we had an Alfa Romeos going round. Oh, it was absolute carnage. And that's really shaking up the order. So it won't be surprising if today, with this decent-looking top 10, that looks quite normal if we start to get a bit of normality into the order. But Carlos Sainz ahead of Charles Leclerc, the two Ferraris ahead of the McLarens. They are starting to get into some form. But once again, the Spaniard is looking a bit better than his teammate, the Monegasque, this season. The Spaniard, of course, Carlos Sainz, will be looking for a good result at his home race. Then Lando Norris, P7, Danny Rick, P8. The two McLarens sitting behind the Ferraris. They'll be a bit annoyed about that for the constructors. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some squabbling between those two teams. But of course, Norris in the McLaren ahead of Danny Rick. We've seen it quite a bit now. Danny Rick, with lower focus, is struggling at the back of that 4. He really is struggling. Great start to the season at Bahrain. Starting to struggle at the back of that 4. Just isn't really getting great results, and we're seeing him drop off those guys a little bit. So he'll struggle to potentially stay in contact with them and in the DRS in today's race. Then Pierre Gasly, P9. No surprises there. He'll be a bit annoyed he couldn't get maybe into the mix ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, but I'm sure I'll be fighting with those guys in the race. And so will my teammate, Yuki Tsunoda. Really proud of him. Q3 appearance, first one for him at the team. He's going to be starting on those softs, and going P10 on the softs here probably isn't going to lead to points, but I'm really happy that he has managed to go out there, put a really good lap in, put a really good lap in Q2 to get through to Q3, and then P10 is where we need him to be. We need him to be in the top 10 fighting with Gasly. Hopefully he can do that today. Then Fernando Alonso outperforming an Alpine that is improving, but still not that fantastic. Everyone from P11 down is using the mediums, including Fernando. Lance Stroll, P12 for AlphaTauri. Despite the low focus, decent quality result there. He'll be wanting to get up to my teammate and fight with him a little bit. That'll probably be towards the end of the race when Tsunoda's charging through on fresh mediums using the 2-stopper. Then we got Seb Vettel, P13, the German in the Aston Martin. Little bit annoyed with that, maybe, to be behind Alonso. You know, he's in a better car. A little bit disappointing, but I'm sure he'll be fighting in this one. Then Esteban Ocon, P14. Not too bad of a result for him to be ahead of the Alfa Romeos finally, which is certainly something he has struggled to do. We've seen that quite often with Ocon. He's struggled to be ahead of the Alfa Romeos. He hasn't struggled to do that today. Of course, the Alpine's starting to get a bit of a better car. Good to see Ocon managing to get away from the Alfa Romeos pretty comfortably. Hopefully he can start to fight forwards towards the likes of Vettel, Stroll and Alonso. Then Giovinazzi, P15. Not too bad for him in the Alfa Romeo. Then George Russell, P16. A fantastic quali result for him in his Williams, outperforming that car by quite a lot, I have to say. Robert Schwartzman, P17. It was a promising quali at Imola, but clearly, in terms of his grid position, not so great at Spain. He'll be looking to go forward a bit there. Low focus, though, for Robert, so you do get that inconsistency. You get to see what he can actually do, and then for the next couple of race weekends, he just doesn't perform well. Then, Kimi Raikkonen, P18 for Alfa Romeo. A bit disappointing for him after a Q2 appearance at Imola. Then, Schumacher ahead of Latifi. Really great work in the Haas there, because the Haas is so far off Williams. That's a really good work from young Mick Schumacher. Ahead of Nicholas Latifi. Mazepin P21, and we are starting P22. That's your grid, of course. Very 2x2 for the top 8. But Mercedes dominant over Red Bull, Ferrari dominant over McLaren, my teammate in the top 10. And we have got a lot of work to do to climb up the field. So this should be a very exciting GP. Of course, there's still a chance for us in this one for some points, because we can go for the one-stopper. Those in the top 10 can have to go for the two-stopper, of course, which is a lot slower. So there's still a minute chance. Maybe need a bit of a look and a safety car, but we'll have to wait and see. Before we begin, if you guys haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button on this video. Really helps me out. Totally free to subscribe to the channel, but it allows me to create this regular and hopefully exciting content. But time now to get into some action at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. We've had a slightly longer grade rundown than usual, of course, with us not being in Q2 and 3 yesterday, but now it's time for the Spanish Grand Prix, the second time in the career mode. 5 red lights. They're out and away we go, and it's a pretty good start from Nikita Mazepin. A poor one for Latifi in front. It's been a little while since we've been looking at the back of the Haas and the Williams cars, as we're going to try and send it down the inside line there. Oh, is there space to try and send it on Russell and Schwartzman too? Yes, there is. It gets a little bit touchy through there, side by side with Russell. Schwartzman gets in front. We're going to try it maybe round an outside line, the car snapping a little bit. That's us up into P16, which is not a bad start at all. Is there any sort of space for us to try and stick it down the inside of Schwartzman? No, not through there. Now down the inside of Robert Schwartzman, and that is past the Alfa Romeo. A really nice start to the Spanish GP here. Oh, God, this is going to be a good race for us. You can see we've been put right into the top of those medium runners. We've got Ocon, Vettel in front, then Alonso, and likes of Stroll. Can we send it on Ocon too? Yes, we can. Dispatch, 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 and oh, behind. Robert Schwartzman might come through. He had a moment, then we have a moment. A bit messy through there, but it's Vettel in front, and all of a sudden, we're pretty much to where I think I would have qualified had we not have even taken any penalties at all. So really fantastic start here. Checo Perez is the leader. Wow. Perez has got past both Mercedes. There's a Ferrari up there in P3. Is that Sainz potentially? What a start here. Plenty of action. Vettel starting to get away a bit. We want to try and catch back up to him for when DRS is enabled in this one. Always pivotal at Spain. You've got to be in that DRS zone, but it's really difficult compared to the AI in Sector 3. They are very speedy in Sector 3 here at Spain, so it is very difficult to try and stay within 1 second of them, but that's what we need to do. And once you're getting pulled along, there's a decent chance of an overtake. But as you can see, Schwartzman starting to drop away a bit. DRS will be enabled for this zone coming up soon next lap. But what a dramatic start to this one. The order shuffling a little bit as we get a little bit messy through there. You certainly don't want to be going too wide at that corner, because all you're going to get is gravel and your car will be facing in the wrong direction. Well, the race replay of the start here, we were starting P22, and what a place to try and fight up from. Our start initially wasn't actually that bad. Looking at it, you can see a bit of a poor start for the Williams there. The Haas and Nikita Mazepin flying forward into the first corner, though. We went for that lovely dive bomb. You can see the Aston Martins around the outside line. Schwartzman and ourselves sandwiching George Russell with nowhere to go there. We then got past George Russell, Robert Schwartzman there, P15 just in front of us. You can see the squabble of cars in front. We'll have to have a look at a replay of the start, looking at those guys, because that certainly looks like a bit of a jumbled up order there. But you can see behind the Williams having a little bit of a look on Antonio Giovinazzi. Nearly a bit of a fight between those guys. Certainly wouldn't say no to that. And of course ourselves, P15. What a way to start the race, and of course getting past Esteban Ocon after that. Really couldn't have thought anything better to start it, because that puts us right into the mix of those guys on the one-stopper. That, of course, includes the likes of Seb Vettel sitting in front, then Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll, my teammate Yuki Tsunoda, currently P10 off the start. Not too bad for him, not absolute disaster really. P10 where he started, pretty good. Then, of course, Pierre Gasly's gained a place on Daniel Ricciardo. And I think, because then the order above after Lando Norris has changed so much, we'll have a look at the race start from a different angle. Well, I can certainly tell you, Valtteri Bottas did not get away well off the start. This is the replay of him. You can see here a really poor start, and you can see in the wind mirrors the Red Bulls really trying to come up alongside. We've got Sergio Perez charging into the first corner, into chase cam, him versus Lewis Hamilton side by side. Then the Ferrari at Carlos Sainz comes in between Bottas and Verstappen. Bottas gets all over the place there. We'll switch the camera angle to his front wing, then Verstappen P4. Carlos Sainz is in front. Lewis Hamilton versus Checo Perez. Perez looking round the outside line, and he gets the move done, does he? Into the next corner, you can see Hamilton trying to stick it out round the outside line, but no, he won't. Checo Perez in the lead on the first lap from P3. Hamilton P2, of course. He started P2, so not too bad for him. Sainz all the way up to P3. Fantastic start for him. Max Verstappen down to P4 from started P4, so not too bad. Bottas, though, from pole down to P5. Disappointing start for him. Charles Leclerc stays P6, but not just an exciting start at the back, a really great one at the front. Well, we're on lap number 3 here, and for the first time in this race, DRS is available, but we're not close enough to be able to use it. So a bit of a shame there that we're not able to use DRS, but we will if we can stay close. No, we're not really close enough to Seb Vettel here. In terms of the way it's going, though, the softs aren't exactly pulling away from the mediums here. We're seeing that, which is certainly very interesting, and that's because those softs have had to been used in Q2, and then, of course, they've now had 3 laps of the race. You can see Vettel starting to get away from us a bit here. Meanwhile, Schwartzman's dropping back, so we're sort of dropping away from one Alfa Romeo, but gaining comfortably on another Alfa Romeo that sits behind. So it's a bit of a difficult one here for us, because we need to get into the DRS range, so we've got a chance. In terms of Carlos Sainz, he was P3 before. He's now been overtaken by the Red Bull of Verstappen. Bottas had a terrible start, of course, down to P5. He'll be quite annoyed with that, but you can see the field is really starting to break apart a little bit here. But I have to say, those guys on the mediums were not dropping that far away from the soft runners, and that is very encouraging in this one, because those guys have a whole extra pit stop to complete than ourselves. You can see that maybe Stroll's lacking a bit of pace compared to the Alpine of Alonso and Vettel. He certainly is starting to hold up Alonso a little bit here. We're not going to be close enough, I don't think, this lap for any DRS, which is a bit of a shame. Certainly wouldn't have said no to some, but we're not going to be close enough again and that's going to make it very, very difficult for us to be able to stay with Vettel. Well, Carlos Sainz has had quite the start to this GP. Verstappen certainly hasn't. As we head down to the first corner, Verstappen's going to take P3 away from the Ferrari driver, is he? Away from the Spaniard. It's side by side through the first two corners. Bottas is sat back there. If there's any leftovers for him to take, but there won't be. Max Verstappen up to P3. Now he can chase after Hamilton to support his teammate in Red Bull, but P3 ahead of Mr. Carlos Sainz there, then Valtteri, Bottas, you've got Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris there. But lovely overtake from Max Verstappen. Well, a nice little moment in this one. We have actually gone quickest in the final sector, my weakest sector, and we've gone quickest, and that has got us close enough to Seb Vettel to have some DRS. Now we're into the train. Thought I'd show you guys this because it's a pivotal moment in the race. We're closing on Vettel here, quite a chunk. A chance of an overtake maybe later this lap. We go purple in sector 1. You can see we're starting to get into a groove here. And Vettel seems a little slow in front of us at the moment. I think Stroll might be holding us up, so this could be why. But of course, with Vettel in front, we are getting pretty close to him. An overtake could be on pretty soon. I wouldn't count it out if we can just try to keep it round here, a little bit close on the edge. We're going to be stuck in this DRS train for a little while, but if we can be close enough down the main straight, use some ERS, get a slipstream, there might be a chance of an overtake at some point in this one. We've just got to keep ploughing through. Plus, it won't be long until the front runners decide to box for mediums. And actually, that's happening right now. I think Verstappen is the first of the two Red Bulls to come in, and we're going to get a good insight of the gap we're going to have on those guys. You can see he's come in with a McLaren and Alpha Tauri. That's Ricciardo and Gasly. They're on to softs, going for an aggressive two-stopper. And look at that gap now we've got. I wouldn't count points out for all three of us here. Four of us, sorry. There's four in this train as we go a bit messy through the first section. But points, certainly quite possible, because they are now at turn 1, exiting the pits. Meanwhile, we have finished the start. Well, we finished the whole of Sector 1, not just the start of Sector 1, so it's looking very promising for us in this one from what was not a great position, P22 on the grid. Well, I have to say the action continues here in Spain, because we are right on the back of Seb Vettel. A lot more of those guys on the two-stopper have now pitted. And they're, of course, at the back of that long train, which is led by Schwartzman. It's going to take them ages to get past those guys. It really is on for some decent points here. This train with ourselves, Vettel, Alonso and Stroll, we've just got to keep pushing on in this race. We've got to keep going strong. And, yeah, a result could really be on for us here. It really, really could be. As, of course, Vettel and Alonso still chasing Stroll. We're not really getting anything. We're stuck in a DRS train, but it isn't all that bad as we struggle a bit in the final sector. Sainz and Bottas are both in, which now means that Lance Stroll leads the race. So Lance Stroll fans, I'm sure you'll be happy with that, because your man will be leading the race here. But now Sector 1 is our strongest part of this track, and we're getting pretty close to Vettel. Not close enough. We'll just have to stay put, not stick put, stay put in this DRS train for a little longer, and then maybe go, I don't know, for the undercut or the overcut on the mediums when it comes to pit stops, to try and get some moves, because it's very difficult to be close enough to the other cars when it gets to the DRS zone. You can see we just start to slip away before this DRS zone, and it does cost us a little bit, and we're not going to be in contention for a move. An appropriate time to give you all a refresh of the order. You can see ourselves currently P4 having a bit of a look at Seb Vettel, but your leader, Lance Stroll, currently, he's on the one stopper, hasn't pitted yet. Neither has Alonso, who sits P2, Vettel P3, and ourselves P4. That's, of course, the front four at the moment. All of us on the one stopper haven't pitted yet. Then we've got Robert Schwartzman, also on the one stopper, about 8 seconds behind ourselves. In another train, he leads Esteban Ocon in the Alpine, Antonio Giovinazzi in the Alfa Romeo, and then the last of those in this order on the one-stop strategy, George Russell. in P8 in the Williams. Really great work from him. Then Lewis Hamilton has already pitted. He will pit again, but currently sits P9, stuck behind the Williams of George Russell. He is struggling a little bit there to get past him. We're going to have a DRS train, as now, maybe, just maybe, he's going to come through on the right-hand side here. It is side-by-side action. Does he get the move done? Better camera angle would be nice. Oh, no, he doesn't. Lewis Hamilton can't get past George Russell here. So Lewis Hamilton stuck in this DRS train. Then you've got Raikkonen on the one-stopper. Checo Perez also stuck in this DRS train now. Behind him, Carlos Sainz still going strongly. He's got back ahead of Verstappen in the pit stops. Charles Leclerc then sits behind him. P14 dropping a little bit away from the Red Bull and is currently leading Valtteri Bottas, who sits P15. He leads Lando Norris and then Pierre Gasly. Those guys, of course, also pitted. Then Yuki Tsunoda, my teammate, has jumped Daniel Ricciardo, who has really dropped further down the field here, down to P19. Then Nicholas Latifi, Nikita Mazepin are both on the one-stopper. Sadly, we no longer have Mazepin's teammate Schumacher in this one, but that is your refresh after the first set of pit stops for those on the lovely two-stop. Well, at the moment, it does seem that we're just struggling a little bit to try and get close enough to Vettel. Still, it's just a DRS train. That's what we're seeing further back. It is a DRS train. A little bit shuffly around in that one, but there aren't really being that much progress from the faster cars. They might be on better tyres, but when you're in a DRS train, as you're seeing here, it's very hard to overtake. I really do think Alonso's got better pace than Stroll. Maybe a little bit, but he's been getting onto the back of him, but then just not getting a move done in the DRS zone. It's not long until pit stops, and those guys are in, so we are staying out this lap. We're alright with tyre wear. We're going to box this lap. We're going to try to go for the undercut here. I mean the overcut, sorry. Not the undercut, the overcut. It's worth it, because even if we lose a little bit of time, we could still just be able to make it back up again. So I think this is an important decision for us to make. Those guys could end up squabbling out the pits, and as we've just gone quickest in Sector 1 there, I certainly wouldn't put it out the question of us being able to get moves on those guys. We're going to go for the strategy there, and if it pays off, well, there's going to be big prizes, really, because these worn mediums, there's not too much of a drop-off in terms of pace, really. I think they'll still be quicker than fresh hards. Even if they're not, if those guys do end up getting out the pits and squabbling a little bit, then of course we've got a good chance. And you can see here, by not being in a train, we have got so much more pace. We've gone quickest in Sector 1, green Sector 2, Hamilton, of course, now past Antonio Giovinazzi, and Esteban Ocon is next for him as we're going to get into the pits. There we go, and then, of course, Robert Schwartzman leading that train, but you've got to look a bit further back to find the Red Bulls and the Ferraris. You know, it's not exactly as if the teams are, the faster cars are really flying past at the moment. You know, they've got one more pit stop, we've got one more pit stop. On go hards. 2.4 second stop, I'll take that. Where are the people arriving? There they are, I think. Lance Stroll. Can we jump Seb Vettel? Yes, we have done exactly that. With a fantastic lap on those mediums, we've jumped Seb Vettel. And now it's Alonso, Stroll and my teammate Yuki Tsunoda, who's still got to pit again. It is crunch time now. This is where those front runners will be able to gain the time. But that's pivotal that we've got past Vettel. We've picked one of them off. My teammate Tsunoda is at the front of this train. So maybe he could back it up a little bit to help us out here to be able to get Alonso. But we've got Vettel. That's what I wanted to do, is try and get Vettel. Well, a refresh of the order. The second one of these, and there'll be 3 in this race. Lewis Hamilton currently leads in his Mercedes from Checo Perez in the Red Bull. He's starting to drop a bit away from the faster Mercedes car. Then Carlos Sainz sits P3. Solid work from him. Still ahead of Max Verstappen. That's, of course, after the pit stops. they had for their first stop. Then Charles Leclerc hits P5. Fantastic work from him. He's now ahead of Mr. Valtteri Bottas. So great work there to be ahead of the Mercedes. Looking strong today, our Ferrari, compared to McLaren, who are struggling a little bit. That's because you've got Lando Norris, then Pierre Gasly, Daniel Ricciardo, and my teammate Yuki Tsunoda starting to fall off the back of that, of course. Gasly splitting the two McLarens. Ricciardo's caught up a bit. But Yuki currently sits P10. He won't be getting any points today, of course. Still got to pit again. The cars behind him don't. Of course, then you've got the leader of those on the one stopper, Lance Stroll, ahead of Fernando Alonso, the Spaniard, at his home race. Ourselves, Seb Vettel, then at the back of that train. Then you have to go 12 seconds back to find the rest of those guys on the one stopper. You've got Robert Schwartzman leading Esteban Ocon, Antonio Giovinazzi, George Russell, Kimi Raikkonen, and then quite a bit back from there to Nicholas Latifi, who is then 4 seconds ahead of Nikita Mazepin. Those guys way off the back of that train. But I have to say, it's certainly looking interesting here. Wouldn't be surprised, as I've said, maybe Lance Stroll at the front of that train could be in for a podium in this one. Well, lap 18, and I have to say, this GP here in Spain is flying by. So much more fun for me than it was the last time we went here in career mode. That was a really difficult race. We just couldn't find any pace on the inters. This has been a really enjoyable race, and now those guys who opted for the softs, we got a Red Bull, Ricciardo, Gasly I think are in. Those guys have pitted, and we'll be able to see a sort of gap in terms of how much they've got to make up to ourselves, and it's going to be massive here. It is going to be massive. I wouldn't be joking if maybe it could be between Stroll, Alonso, ourselves and Vettel for the win, because we have been working as a four, not fighting. We've been working as a four, going flat out, and going really just consistently not causing problems for each other. And look at the gap back to the Red Bull. They might be on fresh mediums, I'm telling you that, but we are on fairly nice looking hards at the moment, not that worn, and those guys are going to struggle a bit with tyre wear on the mediums at the end of the race. So basically, I wouldn't be surprised if we could definitely have one of us in this train for the podium. And Lance Stroll is certainly looking pretty comfortable at the front of this train. He's been comfortable there for quite a while. He hasn't been phased earlier in this one, where he of course had to, as you get a warning there, where he had to defend without DRS. I just went over that because I wasn't going to make the curve properly. But okay, you're in the top 10. As you can see, we are now in the top 10. Verstappen, 11 seconds behind. That's a lot to make up. Well, another pivotal point in the GP. Hamilton has entered the pits, and Alfa Romeo is off again. Is it a mechanical or is it a spin? Could be either. We're used to it being a spin by this point, but it could be either. It's another spin. Is that for Antonio Giovinazzi? Oh dear, if that is him, he'll be very frustrated. Meanwhile, Hamilton, the charging Hamilton, with the fastest lap. He's on fresh mediums, 9 seconds behind. That's a lot to make up. Give you an update in a minute, of course, when the front runners at the moment now, the Red Bull of Perez, the two Ferraris and Valtteri Bottas pit, we'll be able to have a look at the gap back to them, but we're dropping a bit away from Alonso. One thing in this GP we can't afford to do is to lose DRS, and that's what we've done. Put our head down now and try to catch back up to them. It's pivotal that we don't drop away. We've got to work as a unit here. That's what we've done all GP. There is possibly just not going to be time to fight it out for the win. If we fight it out for the win here, there will be no win. We will have Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez, Bottas onto the back of us. We've got work to do in Sector 1. But as you can see, the Ferrari heading out the pits, the Red Bull, Mercedes, Perez, where's he going to come out? Is he going to end up coming out the pits in front or behind Hamilton? Behind Hamilton. So Hamilton, P6, is the current leader. Still a Ferrari out on track. That'll be interesting to see where they filter out. But once the Ferrari's pitted, it will be Lance Stroll in the lead of this GP. Then Fernando Alonso, he'd love a win at his home race. then ourselves and Vettel. The leader of this train probably can win because, I mean, Vettel's going to really defend Hamilton if he gets here. I'm going to defend Hamilton if he gets here. I'm sure Alonso, if he was P2, would defend Hamilton if he gets here because that's a podium. So, really, we've just got to plough through for this last 11 laps, put in the laps, and try to stop Hamilton from getting as close to us. Or we need to get on with some overtaking, which is very difficult in a DRS train here. Well, here is your refresh of the order here as Carlos Sainz just pits. That's to mark all of those guys in the two-stopper pitting. Lance Stroll currently leads the race ahead of Fernando Alonso, ourselves, and Seb Vettel. What a great one it would be if Stroll could maybe win here, because if we look further down the order, Lewis Hamilton might be 2.3 seconds back, but when he gets to the train, he's going to struggle to make overtakes. We've seen DRS trains so common in this. That could really cost him here. Of course, Checo Perez sits P6 still behind Hamilton. Then you've got Carlos Sainz still P7 behind Perez, but Charles Leclerc has done wonders during the pit stops. He's up to P8 ahead of Max Verstappen in his Red Bull. Really great work from Charles Leclerc there. Then, of course, Lando Norris in the last of the points positions, P10 for him. It's been a bit of a bad one so far for McLaren. Ferrari looking a lot better, P7 and 8. McLaren down P10 and 15. Valtteri Bottas currently sits P11 at the moment, out of the points. Was on pole, he's lost 10 places. Really dismal GP for him. Then Robert Schwartzman, 25 seconds off Valtteri, leading the other train in this Grand Prix. Not fighting for points, but 12th would be a very good result for Robert. He sits in front of Esteban Ocon, and then the strugglers on the two-stop. Gasly, Ricciardo and Tsunoda just got stuck in DRS trains, and it has cost them in this one. P14, 15 and P16 in this one. Then Antonio Giovinazzi sits P17 in the Alfa Romeo, with George Russell at the back of that train. Nicholas Latifi currently sits P19, ahead of Kimi Raikkonen after Raikkonen's spin. And then, of course, Mazepin rounds out the field. Well, now we've actually caught up to Alonso. I wasn't expecting to be able to go for a move here, but round the outside line here at turn 4, I do believe it is. We're going to fight it out. Down the hill, try to avoid contact, hang him out to dry. And although we get a bit of oversteer on the exit, that is P2. And that's a pivotal move because Hamilton is only 2.3 seconds back. We want to be as far away from him as possible. And now we've got 2 cars between myself and him, which makes it a lot longer for Hamilton to have to get here. And it is pivotal that we hold up that train as much as we can, because at the moment we're outscoring our championship rivals for the 3rd race in a row, and Lance Stroll is currently leading. However, he doesn't have DRS from anyone in front of him, so as long as we stay within DRS for this lap, which we're just about going to do. No, we're not. We don't have DRS for this lap. That's a bit of a problem. We need to catch up to Stroll, get within DRS, and then need to go for a move sometime soon, because Lewis Hamilton has found the back of an Aston Martin. Specifically, he's found Seb Vettel, which is quite a calamity for ourselves here, because it does, of course, mean that it's not going to be very long at all until Mr. Lewis Hamilton gets past Seb Vettel, and he's right on the back of him now. It's only a matter of time before that move occurs, likely to be in the next DRS zone. So, Hamilton is charging. Well, you would probably have thought that we'd reached definitely the main event of this race, but I'm not entirely sure that's correct at the moment, because Vettel is still holding off Sir Lewis Hamilton and a Red Bull, whether that's Perez or Verstappen, I'm not sure. But of course the other Red Bull sat behind the 2 Ferraris just behind. But as you can see, we are closing in on Lance Stroll, and a battle could ensue. Further back, Hamilton's just stuck in a DRS train now, and this is actually what was quite easy for this to happen. Half expected it, and it has happened here. Lewis Hamilton stuck in the DRS train, which means it's myself and Alonso and Stroll to battle it out for the win. Stroll, of course, leading, but we are catching up to him, and if we can carefully time when we go for a move on him, it could be looking pretty good. But now Fernando Alonso Doesn't want to stick in P3 for much longer. Maybe sensing Lewis Hamilton going to go for an overtake on Seb Vettel. He's very close to slap into the DRS zone. He had a little bit of a look a couple of laps ago. Does he have a look this time? Yeah, I think he does. Maybe a little bit. Nope, actually. Vettel stays comfortably ahead. And we're a bit out of shape through here. So we drop a bit further back from Stroll. Still in DRS. But of course, this is becoming quite an end to the Spanish GP. I mean, it'd be fantastic if we could win. But even more incredible if Lance Stroll could win. Meanwhile, further back, my teammate, Anna McLaren, still stuck behind Robert Schwartzman and the Alpine of Esteban Ocon, I do believe that is. But wow, this is turning into quite a spectacle. To finish, we're catching back up to Stroll, and the whole of that train has now joined this train. But no one can really go for an overtake because it's a DRS train. Just so common around here at Spain, and it's so difficult to overtake here at Spain, especially with these trains. So the order could stay pretty similar. Well, lap 30 out of 33. It's starting to feel like quite a long race, but we're getting closer and closer to Lance Stroll. We're getting closer in the DRS, starting to drop away a bit, struggling in sector 2, as I'm sure you can see this lap, a bit slower than normal. But we are getting closer and closer to Lance Stroll, and then dropping straight back away. But we get messy through there, control it. That might have just shocked Alonso a bit, and he's starting to drop back. This train, however, though, is pretty much staying identical. It's happening a bit further back with the other train led by Robert Schwartzman. So we're just getting stationary at the moment in terms of the order. Yes, I know, Jeff, these tyres do need to last the end of the race. We're nowhere near puncture territory, though, so I think we'll be all right. Now, Lance Stroll sits P1. Can we have a look at him for an overtake using that ERS extra battery energy? Oh, is he going to allow us to go on the outside line here? Got a little messy. Can we go around the outside line? Wheel banging. Now side by side, we're going to try and send it down the inside line, and we're forced to back off to avoid a crash. That could just back up the cars behind into the likes of Hamilton and the Ferraris, of course. Definitely have to say Bottas not having a good race here. The McLaren certainly not having a good race. Didn't have a good race last time out, and we've dropped a bit further back from Lance Stroll. We're almost going to have to just plan it for a last lap. Attack here is behind. You can see in our wind mirrors, Hamilton had a little bit of a look at Seb Vettel. Again, just can't go for an overtake in this DRS train. We don't leave ourselves vulnerable by not having DRS though for the next straight and making a mistake, but it's going to come down pretty much to the final lap here. Another little mistake. Does that cost us DRS? Yes, it does. We could be under threat from Alonso here. This is not good at all. We are under threat from Alonso. Just try to break the DRS. He's going to try and stick it down the inside line of us here. We comfortably stay ahead, thank God, there. And don't lose too much to Stroll. We've got to be within DRS on the last lap and throw something at it. As further back, you can see Hamilton getting very close to the back. I thought it was side by side, but they're not. Wow. Vettel is an absolute star at the moment. Incredible defending. Well, I think I've just put in the final sector of my life. That is the first time I've nailed the final sector here at Spain. And now Lance Stroll sits directly in front of us. Can we go for the move? Round the outside line on the last lap into the first corner. Alonso is miles away further back, and that is us ahead of Lance Stroll here on the last lap. Surely it couldn't be. Surely it can't be. The third consecutive win of the season here from last on the grid today. We've just got to play it carefully here. Very, very carefully. Had the final sector of my life last lap. Really pushing it to the max. Can we just carefully bring it home? Last lap here. Can we do it? Oh, don't want to be too risky there. We've got to play it carefully. That's the last DRS zone gone. And now we can just sit and be calm. As further back, is that Vettel? And Alonso looking a bit close. No, it's Alonso coming up. Right, now we can just drive this one carefully home. Because we are going to, here, from last on the grid in Spain, with an insane one-stopper, win, for the third time, this season. The 5th time in the career mode, the 4th consecutive win, and it is P1 in Spain.
Absolutely awesome. Just amazing. Well done.
Another Spanish Grand Prix is over, and what a special race it was. And talk to me, what do you think it was that sealed the win for them?
Well, I honestly feel it was down to the driver and car today. I mean, we can talk driver skill all day, but if you don't have a solid team to back that, you're never going to get anywhere. When you hit that sweet spot of having both an excellent driver and an incredible car, that's when you see results like those we witnessed today.
Welcome then to the podium, our top 3 drivers. What a great effort from them today in a very difficult race.
Wow, well, 3 out of 3. I don't really know what to say here. 76 points now out of 3 races. I mean, I don't know what to say. I don't know how we've managed it, to be honest with you. P22 to P1. I mean, really? Was my performance incredible? No, it wasn't incredible. It wasn't incredible really at all, I don't think. It was good. It wasn't incredible. But it was the strategy again. Bahrain, pure pace. We would have probably, had we gone with the strategy, P3. Imola, pure pace, P1. Today, pure pace, probably P11. But the strategy has taken us to a win here. 45 minutes of racing action. 25 points on the board on this one. P22 to P1 with that one stopper. Just got to appreciate that. And it's not like it's just us who's managed something pretty incredible. I mean, by the end of lap 1, we were behind Seb Vettel. And it was a great lap 1. We were behind Seb Vettel. And from there, it was like we're starting from P14. And of course, you got Seb Vettel there, Fernando Alonso, and Lance Stroll. All of them started outside the top 10. That's your top 4. Your top 4 comes from P11 and down. It is pretty insane, I have to say. Of course, we do win again from P22 to P1. This will certainly go down in history on my channel in terms of a race. That can't really be topped. I mean, the second to last lap, for me, Sector 3 was the best Sector 3 I've ever done. I nearly spun it, but kept it on track, and we managed to get the move on Lance Stroll along the DRS straight. He takes P2, got to be heartbreak for him. Misses out by just under 3/10. A real heartbreak for Lance Stroll there, the Canadian. Be a bit disappointed with it, but overall a fantastic drive from him from P12 to P2. Alonso, P11 to P3. The Spaniard gets a podium at his home race. Guess he wasn't expecting that, but 15 points on the board for him. A truly fantastic drive. Really great work. And then Seb Vettel equally deserved a podium. He defended from Hamilton for a massive chunk of the race at the end. 12 points. I think you should have an extra few for that. P4 in the end in the Aston Martin. Another great drive, consistent from Seb Vettel. Then Lewis Hamilton, the first of those guys on the 2 stoppers. A 1 minute 19, 1:56. Finishes 1.5 seconds off ourselves. 11 points in the end, taking the fastest lap, of course. He was blisteringly quick, but as soon as you get in the DRS train, you can't overtake. I mean, in terms of us, we were in that DRS train for 32 laps. And on track, we only got 2 overtakes. We got 1 overtake on Vettel in the pits. We got the overtake on Alonso on track and the overtake on Stroll on track. And to be honest, most of the drivers, the likes of Mercedes and the Red Bulls, challenging the field, they got about a couple. The rest was done generally just in pit stops. So really, difficult one to overtake when you're in a train. You couldn't get it done. And Hamilton P5. Sergio Perez P6 for Red Bull. Not too bad for him, but of course a massive points loss to ourselves. He only takes 8 today. Did pretty solid considering his Red Bull. If you compare it to the Mercedes, he had a quicker lap than ourselves, as you'd expect, and that was probably not representative of my average lap time. But Checo Perez, P6. I mean, when you say P6 for him in the title fight with us, really disappointing, but when you look at the circumstances, pretty decent drive from him. And then the Ferraris had a good drive today. Carlos Sainz, P7, Charles Leclerc, P8. 10 points for the team, 6 for Carlos, 4 for Charles, and that allows them to pull back towards McLaren, maybe even away from them. A really good drive from those two. Great to see Carlos up there, the Spaniard, at his home race. Then, of course, Max Verstappen, P9 in the Red Bull. 4th on the grid. I mean, on track he did pretty well, but the strategy didn't work. He lost out to Carlos Sainz due to the strategy, then lost out to Charles Leclerc due to the strategy. Maybe should have pulled it in a lap later, lap earlier. Ifs and buts, coulds, woulds, you know. But 2 points is very disappointing for him. 6 less than his teammate. That could be pivotal for the championship. Then Lando Norris sits P10 for McLaren. A dismal race weekend for McLaren. Ricciardo scored 1 point last weekend. Norris scores a solitary point this weekend. A really, really disappointing one for McLaren. Bit of a disappointing one for Norris, but a point. I suppose you just got to take it, roll with it, and go on to the next race of the season. Valtteri Bottas, though, currently sits P11 at the end of this race. P11 from P1 on the grid. This just shows you how insane it's been. We've won from last. Bottas has dropped out the points from first in an extremely quick car. An absolutely insane race. But he just got really messed up by strategy. He had a terrible start, dropped down to P5, then got messed up by strategy. It didn't work out for him and couldn't get overtakes in the DRS train and left empty-handed at the end of the GP weekend. And then Robert Schwartzman, P17 to P12. Really good work from the Aston Martin. Got a decent start. Great defending in the end for his best result of the season. He finishes ahead of Pierre Gasly. Managed to get the overtake on Esteban Ocon in the end, but disappointing one for Pierre. He was looking good at the start compared to the McLarens and the Ferraris, but again, just the two-stopper. He had to do it because of the softs, and he really, really did pay the price. So the Frenchman, P13 for AlphaTauri in this one. He's going to be quite disappointed with that. I'm not kidding. He will be quite disappointed with that. It is a pivotal one for them, of course. They're slipping away from us in terms of the constructors. It's turning less of a AlphaTauri, McLaren, Ferrari fight, more into a Mercedes versus Red Bull fight. And ourselves in that one too. Then, Esteban Ocon, P14 for Alpine. Well, I don't know what to say about it. It's just an okay drive from Ocon. He's had okay drives. He hasn't been astounding. He would have hoped for maybe a little bit more than P14, looking where his teammate is, but overall, not a terrible drive. Daniel Ricciardo, P15 in the McLaren. He struggled once again. P8 on the grid. Just struggled, really, to be honest. He just doesn't have that pace today. And really, unlike his teammate, he's just not got it. He's not got it. He's just not got the pace. We've seen it in qualifyings now in races compared to the two Ferraris and his teammate. Pace just doesn't seem to be there for him. It really doesn't seem to be there for him. The consistency really isn't. He got stuck behind the likes of Schwartzman, Gasly and Ocon, and he paid the price for it. Then Yuki Tsunoda, P16. I just want to point this out. 1 minute 19.544 is quicker, no, slightly slower than our best lap. So it's not like we've done incredible. It's all down to strategy, this one. Second win of the season, thanks to strategy. I'll certainly keep deciding how I'm going to go in terms of strategy then, because it's working well. But Yuki from P10, P16. A bit disappointing, but not much you can really do, is there? There's not much you can really do there in that sort of a race. And Antonio Giovinazzi, P17 for Alfa Romeo. A bit disappointing for him, considering he was on the one-stopper, but yeah, it's an okay result, bit disappointing. George Russell dropped from P16 to P18. No real surprise in a rubbish Williams, basically. Great quali and an okay race. Kimi Raikkonen, thanks to a spin, finishes P19, way off the pace, 51 seconds off the pace there. He'll be disappointed with that after that mistake. Nicholas Latifi finishes P20. Not too bad for him. He's in front of the house of Nikita Mazepin. It was a bit of a dismal drive, really, from Latifi. You felt he could have been a bit better in that one, but not to be today. Of course, Haas, the last of the finishers. Mick Schumacher, the only DNF today, sadly, got a mechanical failure. Then, in terms of the standings, we have a 35-point lead on Checo Perez heading into our strongest track of the season. It's looking pretty good for us. Then, of course, Verstappen sits P3 for Red Bull. He is just 9 points off his teammate Perez, but with a very shaken up result today. It's looking spicy at the top. So, Red Bulls remain ahead of the Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton currently sits on the same points as Max Verstappen. He has 32. Valtteri Bottas not scoring, sits there with just 21. Stroll, however, with that fantastic P2 today, promotes himself up to P6. That's Stroll P6 in the championship with 20 points. Alonso P7 with 17. Then Seb Vettel P8 with 16. That shows you how mad it is at the moment, because you've got Stroll, Alonso, Vettel ahead of both McLarens and both Ferraris. Of course, Danny Rick sits P9, 3 points ahead of Charles Leclerc, who's comfortably moved ahead of his teammate. Then Pierre Gasly sits P11 for AlphaTauri. He'll be happy to be ahead of my teammate and both Sainz and Norris, but not the best for him. He has 8 points, so does Yuki Tsunoda, my teammate. Carlos Sainz has gained a couple. I now have 7. Meanwhile, Lando Norris has a disappointing 5. Those are the last of the point scorers. Russell, Schwartzman, Ocon, Latifi, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Schumacher and Mazepin still yet to score. But wow, it's certainly looking a very spicy one in the championship. We are getting into a title fight with the Red Bulls. Don't forget that we might be able to get some really good results the first half of the season. There will be a title fight come the end of the season, because I look at the tracks we've got. I'm weaker at Hungary and I'm weaker at Spa. And if we're not able to compete with the Red Bulls there, they'll gain quite a bit on us. So it will be really, really interesting. Throw in a potential mechanical failure with our low durability. You really don't know. You really don't. But we sit P1 with 76 points at the moment. The Red Bull's close. The Mercedes, not that close, really. Considering that Valtteri Bottas 21 points. No, the gap's 9. It's 9 with the Red Bulls. But Bottas will be quite frustrated. The reigning champion, 55 points off retaining his title. But of course, as I was saying, they're insane to have Lance Stroll, Alonso and Vettel all ahead of Ricciardo, Leclerc, Gasly, Tsunoda, Sainz and Norris. It's generally because the McLarens and the Ferraris have just had a disastrous start to the season. And that is quite apparent in the constructor standings. It is extremely obvious at the moment. Very spread in terms of points at the moment. However, our team, 84 points. We're currently in the lead of the constructors, 11 ahead of Red Bull, who have dropped down to second with a disappointing result today. They have 73. Mercedes stay P3, but have just 53 points, dropping a bit away from Red Bull, 31 off the lead. AlphaTauri currently sit P4 ahead of McLaren by 10 points. They're way off the front 3, but AlphaTauri has been consistent, great results from Lance Stroll so far, and that puts them P4 ahead of McLaren. And of course, it's very close from there. McLaren in 5th have 18 points. Alpine just behind have 17. Ferrari have 17. Aston Martin have 16. Williams, Alfa Romeo and Haas still yet to score. But it is all to play for. We've got 3 teams for the Constructors' title. And then potentially AlphaTauri, McLaren, Alpine, Ferrari and Aston Martin for P4. It's likely that that'll go to Ferrari or McLaren. But if we keep getting 2-stop races, the guys on the 1-stop are so quick now and competitive that I would not count them out. And that might happen again in France. I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't be surprised if we see some great 1-stoppers again in France. We saw it last time from Yuki in the AlphaTauri. Great to see that again. But what a race. We win for 3rd time in a row from P22 with a really, really great strategy. Lance Stroll P2, Alonso P3, Vettel P4. All of us from outside the top 10 on the grid using that 1-stopper. Then everyone on the 2-stopper. No points for Valtteri Bottas. McLaren struggling, only 1 point for them. It's looking very spicy this season. It really is. If you guys have enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But wow, we've got a good lead at the moment. It can evaporate very quickly though, so it's certainly going to be interesting this season, I have to say, as we continue along. I wasn't expecting to be in this position. Certainly wasn't. I really thought we'd be lucky for P8 maybe this race, P9, P10. But instead, the win here on the final lap. We like to do it like that. 25 points in the bank. Wow. Well, thanks a lot for watching, guys. And I'll catch you next time on the channel when we've got France qualifying in My Team Career Mode Season 2.